That's what it is. The Indiana Fever get a win today versus the Atlanta Dream, 99-82. Caitlin Clark with a near double-double, 12 points, 9 assists.
All right, let's filter out the noise. The headlines you saw after the Fever Dream game were simple. Fever win, Clark gets near double-double. But if you're here, you're a narrative analyst. You know that the real story is never the one they print on the surface. The box score said the Fever won 99-82, but it didn't tell you how. It didn't tell you that this victory wasn't the result of a brilliant coaching strategy. It was the result of a quiet player-led rebellion, a mid-game adjustment that saw the team abandon a failing system and put their trust in one person, Caitlin Clark. In this video, we are going to connect the dots between a single frustrated comment made by a key veteran before the game and the on-court mutiny that followed. This wasn't just a win, it was a power shift, and we have the evidence to prove it. This is the kind of deep dive analysis the mainstream won't give you. So if you believe in digging for the truth behind the narrative, hit that like button to show us we're on the right track. Your support fuels this investigation. The stage for this drama was set well before tip-off. The Indiana Fever were struggling with inconsistency, and the frustration was palpable. After a previous loss, Coach Stephanie White had publicly questioned her team's heart, stating, "She was disappointed because I felt like there was a lack of competitive fire." That's a heavy accusation from a head coach. But while the coach was pointing fingers, one player was pointing towards a solution. Sophie Cunningham, one of the undisputed energy leaders on this team, broke ranks. She went to the media and put everyone on notice. She said, and I quote, "We're running out of time. It's going to light a fire under our butts, so hopefully you're going to see that energy shift tomorrow." Many dismiss this as standard player speak, but for those of us who analyze the narrative, this was a clear signal. This wasn't just a promise of playing harder, it was a challenge to the entire team's approach. It was a public declaration that the status quo was no longer acceptable. Cunningham was essentially telling the world what we are currently doing is not working, and something is about to change. She was lighting a match, and the first half of the game against the Atlanta Dream was the kindling. And she was right. The first half was a disaster, and it perfectly illustrated the problems Cunningham was hinting at. The official game plan, whatever it was getting shredded. The Atlanta Dream, led by a scorching hot Jordan Canada, looked like they were going to run the Fever right out of their own building.
Barrage by Jordan Canada, who had 26 points in the first half.
Let's put that into perspective. Jordan Canada, a career 8.9 points per game player, dropped 26 points in 2 quarters. She hit 6 three-pointers. The Fever's defensive scheme was completely broken. They had no answer for her. The competitive fire the coach had called for was nowhere to be found, and the team looked disjointed and reactive. When the halftime buzzer sounded, the evidence was undeniable on the scoreboard. Fever 40, Dream 45. They were losing, and the system in place was the reason why. This is the critical moment where the official narrative and the real story diverge. For the players in that locker room, trailing at home after one of their own had publicly demanded a change, this was rock bottom. It was the validation of Cunningham's warning. The coach's strategy had been tested for a full 20 minutes, and it had failed spectacularly. Something had to give. The fire that Sophie Cunningham promised wasn't going to come from a new play drawn on a whiteboard. It had to come from the players themselves. And that brings us to the halftime meeting that changed everything. We don't have a transcript of what was said in that locker room at halftime, but we don't need one. As narrative analysts, we just have to look at the evidence. But drastic, almost unbelievable change in the team's play in the second half. They didn't just play harder, they played differently. They played as if a decision had been made, a quiet pact to ignore the status quo and implement their own system. And the core of that new system was simple.
2 things very interesting in the second half. Number one, they made sure Caitlin Clark had the ball in her hands She became the creator of offense.
That right there is the smoking gun. This wasn't a minor tactical tweak. This was a fundamental philosophical shift. The players took the game into their own hands. The result? A 59-point offensive explosion in the second half. The Fever didn't just erase the deficit, they turned the game into a blowout. With Clark acting as the true floor general, the offense came alive. She finished the game with 9 assists, but that number doesn't tell the full story. She was bending the entire Atlanta defense, creating wide-open looks for everyone. Suddenly, Sophie Cunningham, the very player who lit the match, was on fire, hitting 4 crucial three-pointers on her way to a 16-point, 10-rebound double-double. Kelsey Mitchell, who can struggle to find her rhythm in a stagnant offense, was unleashed, pouring in a team-high 25 points. This wasn't an accident. It's exactly what players have been hinting at for weeks. Let's not forget what was said.
Dantas, Aliyah Boston, and Sophie Cunningham, who literally said, we need to play like with Caitlin. The way Caitlin plays, we need to adjust to Caitlin.
They didn't just say it. In the second half of this game, they finally did it. They made the adjustment themselves. So, let me ask you directly. Do you think this was a conscious decision by the players in the locker room to take control of the offense from the coaching staff? Drop your theory in the comments below, but the adjustment did more than just fix the offense. That new energy, that sense of purpose, bled directly onto the defensive end of the floor. With the offense finally flowing, the team came alive. And leading that defensive charge was the same person who was running the point, Caitlin Clark. She took on the toughest defensive assignment on the court, personally matching up with the red-hot Jordan Canada. The result was one of the most stunning defensive turnarounds you will ever see.
We had Caitlin Clark locking down Jordan Canada. Jordan Canada had 4 second-half points with Caitlin Clark guarding her.
From 26 points to just 4, that is total and complete neutralization. This wasn't just a coaching switch. This was a player taking personal responsibility to shut down the opponent's best player, embodying the competitive fire that the team was supposedly lacking. It was an act of leadership. And when your leader is setting that kind of tone, the rest of the team responds. Rotations were sharper, closeouts were faster, and suddenly the dream looked confused and out of rhythm. The proof, as always, is in the numbers that go beyond the basic box score. In the second half, with the players' system in full effect, Caitlin Clark had a plus-minus of +18. The team as a whole recorded 27 assists on 35 made baskets, a staggering 77% assist rate. That is the statistical signature of a team playing selfless, connected basketball. It's the kind of synergy that had been missing all season, and it was finally unlocked. It was a feeling of inevitability that you could see building with every possession.
Once that started clicking, the Fever ran away with things. Sophie Cunningham was everywhere. Clark had it going with Aliyah Boston again. Kelsey Mitchell was cooking. And all of a sudden, you look up and the Fever are lighting up the scoreboard.
That's what it looks like when a team is finally allowed to play to its strengths. The evidence is overwhelming. The players identified the problem, they implemented their own solution, and the results on both ends of the floor were nothing short of spectacular. This win wasn't a fluke, it was a case study. Which brings us to the uncomfortable question that the front office now has to face. What does this mean for Coach Stephanie White? Okay, now we're getting into territory that's bubbling up on social media and fan forums, but it has to be addressed. There have been reports of fan frustration with her system and calls for her replacement. For weeks, many have argued that her coaching philosophy doesn't suit Caitlin Clark's generational talent. After a win like this, a win that was achieved by seemingly abandoning that very philosophy in favor of a player-led system, her position becomes incredibly difficult. How do you go back to the old way of doing things? How does a coach maintain authority when the players have just provided 24 minutes of undeniable proof that their way is better? This victory, as great as it was for the team, may have put the coach on the clock. This game was so much more than just another win on the schedule. It was a turning point. It was the moment the Indiana Fever players, sparked by the public challenge of a frustrated teammate, took control of their own destiny. They made a halftime adjustment that was less about X's and O's and more about a fundamental shift in power. They put the ball and their trust in Caitlin Clark's hands, and in doing so, they didn't just beat the Atlanta Dream, they validated their own instincts and proved unequivocally that Caitlin Clark is the system. So, what's your take on all this? Let us know in the comments. Do you believe this was a one-time rebellion born of frustration, or have the players permanently seized control of the team's offensive identity from the coaching staff? If you appreciate this kind of deep dive analysis that connects the dots behind the headlines, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss our next investigation. And finally, if you know another narrative analyst who needs to see this breakdown, share this video with them. Let's get their perspective in the discussion.